Hello and welcome to another edition of Ambient Talkie, a show where we dive into some weird and wacky equipment, a wonderful textural, ambiental, call it whatever you want music. I'm Andy from Two Round Robins, and I hope you're ready for some wacky experimental stuff involving gear and whatnot. Today, we're trying to describe the esoteric nature of another wooden instrument from the ciat-lonbarde family, Plumbutter, or better yet, Plumbutter 2, which, going by its creator, Peter Blesser, it's described as a drum and drummer machine. And what exactly that entails or means, I'm gonna talk about it in a little while. But firstly, let's get rid of the background music, and it's just gonna fade out. So what exactly is a plumbutter? How the hell do you patch it? And can you jam with it? But most importantly, can I talk with somewhat expertise and confidence about something that I bought just months ago and have been exploring mostly on my own with limited use of manuals and stuff like that. And can I fake my expertise? This is something that we'll try to find out here. So one of the first things that kind of resonated with me when I first saw the Plumbutter, apart from its lovely wooded design, it's the esoteric description of it. If you go to ciat-lonbarde's official site, which looks like something straight up from the 90s, you'll find an essay which is entitled An Essay on World Making in Plumbutter, which describes the machine as a psychogeographical map of the cities of Baltimore and Cleveland, USA. And the words such as world making kind of really resonated with me. Now why? Well, because I see ambient music and most electronic music to be in a way a world making effort, or better yet, a world building effort. When I try to create ambient music, what I try to do is try to take the listener and put them into an environment which I created. And I think I'm not the only one that does that. So seeing an instrument builder with kind of the same mindset as I have with creating music, kind of really even more intrigued me of what this is and how this works. And I'm gonna link the whole essay in the description, and I do encourage anyone that's at least half interested in instrument building or in synthesis, in how music and equipment work, to read it. It's fairly short, but it's fairly lovely to see in what way the creator thinks about making an instrument or something that will make sound and music. So let's talk about the parts a bit, because we're going to explore the environment and see how, at least how I see it, how Plumbutter works and what the main philosophical ideas are. So here's my own spin on it. Here's my own spin on the whole architecture, or better yet, the urbanization of the whole thing. I would say think of Plumbutter as a world where rhythm is defined by different environments. We start in the city, and this is called Rolls 5, and at least I see this as a city. Now Rolls 5 is a section that has different little inputs and outputs for pulses. These are the core and heart of the urban life, at least speaking in philosophical terms. You can take pulses out and it will control the environments around it, much like a CD does in real life. It will basically not control, but it will influence the environment around it. And much like in real life, also the environment around the city might influence how the city acts, hence the input points. And think of this as the bustle and hustle of life here. It kind of works, it has a pulse on its own, it kind of just, you know, mangles and mangles. Now, before we go outside of the city, there's a special section within the city, which is called the Man with a Red Stream. And think of this like as the industrial part of the city. You can even see here it has a carved little factory tower here that kind of works on its own. And the thing is that you would take the pulses out of it, feed it in here, and this will generate a sequence. So let's say if we take a pulse from the city or the rolls 5 and just, let me just speed it up a bit, you can see it kind of starts going. And I'm just feeding it or recording data within it. And of course you can obviously loop it if you'd like. But basically what it does, it's more or less like a sequencer of sorts that you can basically record data in, have something different each time, and basically just try to take the pulses out and let it control another environment. But apart from it being just a sequencer, it also has a sound source, and this is called the snare, which basically like the name implies, it's just a snare sound. So if I take a pulse out, I can hear a snare. I can maybe slow it down a bit, and you can change the decay, and you can really slow it down and just let the decay work. But it's nothing spectacular, at least from the sound source. It's just a snare. But I think it works wonderful in the context of everything here. And this section does have also a lovely sound source from the quantum dust. Now, what quantum dust is and how it sounds, we'll explore that in a different video when we try to do a basic patch out of Plumbutter. But let's move now from the city area into the suburban area. And this is the, let's say, the left part of Plumbutter. Now, suburban area, of course, it kind of develops out of the urbanization type or the urban area here. But what it consists in Plumbutter is different modules, and all these different modules have a unique characteristic about them. And you can see here everything's kind of mirrored. So you have these little symbols here that are mirrored, so two sound modules that are completely the same yet mirrored. You have two sound modules that are completely the same yet mirrored here, and then in the middle section you have another sound module. Now let's take a look what each of these represents, at least in a philosophical terms, when it comes to Plumbutter. This is the first that we could talk about are the gongs. Peter described these as a representation of palace and a ritual. Hence the sigil looking like a punched up monk that kind of bangs the gong. And I personally think of these as churches within the suburban community. And they have well, I wouldn't say a pulse, but they have a sound source that's very simple in terms. Let's say if you take out the pulse and just feed it into the gong, I'm gonna move the volume knob on the mixer and we can hear it. You can hear this kick-like sound of sorts, which basically obviously you can turn the pitch up or the pitch down and create different sound sources. You have in a way, let's say an envelope or frequency modulation, well, not frequency modulation, but a part here that will obviously change the musicality of this particular section. And if you take it from another side, because you can only hear it on one side now, because this is a full-on stereo machine, You can hear the tick sound here, which is basically the same as this. It's just a different manipulation of the knobs here. And think of this, so either as just some sort of simple tones, simple lower-esque tones that are basically the best representation of the hustle and bustle of the parts or the pulses in the rolls 5. Now, moving to the neighbors of the gongs, you have this. Now, these two are called AV dogs. I have no idea why they're called like this. I think Peter doesn't as well, as much as I read about it. This, at least for me, kind of represent a more fluid movement within the suburban life. Now, if we have the hustle and bustle and 9-to-5 jobs here, going with the whole industry type mentality, traffic and whatnot, chaos here, AV dogs represent, at least for me, kind of a contrast to this. In a way, they kind of represent fluidity. And what I mean is, if we take a listen to AV dogs, you can hear the kind of lovely, like, I've been searching on the forums and I've been reading stuff on the forums, and a lot of people say that they just find them annoying. They just find them kind of like non-incorporatable in a sense of whatever music they're doing. And for me, I'll have to disagree. I find them kind of soothing, you know, especially if we kind of let them prolong in their own tremolo modulation here. And, you know, just kind of let them sing. I find this very soothing. And of course, you can do the same with the other one, you know. It just kind of sounds nice. Obviously, this is pitched differently. So think of this, if you have something running and you pitch in differently, you can get little harmonies out of them, and it sounds very lovely, especially when you start doing very weird rhythmic stuff with the gongs or drony stuff with the gongs. You can do that immediately, and it would just like lush it up a bit, at least from my point of view. Now, in the middle section, that's in the middle of the gongs and AV dogs and the suburban life, it's something that's called the ultrasound. So if we take a look into the whole essay that Peter wrote, what it states there is that in order to have a wonderful and prosperous life within the suburbia, a good suburb must have its fair share of bats, because they kind of indicate that it has lush foliage and they eat the mosquitoes as Peter described them. So this is basically something that probably in his mind that it's mostly needed to have a good suburb and a good thing to have in the suburban section of Plumbutter. If we take out the pulse, you can hear these ultrasonic frequencies which the module contains. So we take a pulse out of rolls 5 and let's just hear it a bit. You can hear it. You can change, obviously, kind of the pitch of it. And, you know, nothing too spectacular. And you're probably thinking, at least those that don't know what a Plumbutter is that it? Is this something that this weird machine has, just some sounds? It does, for me, it kind of sounds lovely. Why? Because it has a very wooden feel to it. It's very organic sounding. But the most important thing is that we're just hearing the sound sources now. We're not trying to patch anything that would indicate like a basic patch of Plumbutter or anything like that. We're just trying to see how it sounds. So in order for you to have something interesting happen here, And to really have fun, you need at least 30 patch cables, and you start interconnecting everything. And it will sound very, very different from what little sound source that we're hearing now. But this does it for the suburban area. And if we, kind of move outwards from the suburbs, so we started in the city and moving to the suburbs and now outwards, just like in real life, we come to the forest. And this is, in a way, one of my favorite pieces, one of my favorite parts about Plumbutter, even by the design choice, just having this little deer here look like something from something tribal, something from a cave or something. It just looks lovely, and it also kind of sounds very soothing. And it's nothing more than just the antenna. So deer horn presents in a way wildlife. It can be very soft and sweet, but it also can be kind of, unpredictable, tribal. It can be, a bit chaotic at times, especially if you start cross-patching within the environment. Now, think about this. This is something that I read on the forum by, I don't know which user, what forum, but it remained kind of stick out to me, that, the design of this instrument is thinking philosophically. It's so wonderful, because if you take like a deer in real life and you let it loose in the streets, it becomes chaotic. It doesn't it doesn't seem to handle it very well, obviously. So putting sound sources out of this forest or this deer horn module into the pulses and, vice versa, bringing the city life into the forest, it kind of destroys the ecosystem in a way. And it's such a wonderful representation. So whoever said that, thank you very much. I think it's a lovely way of seeing how stuff works. So yeah, these are just the modules that we have taken a look. I hope you understand Plumbutter in a more philosophical terms than just, technicalities. And this mostly it's how it resonates with me when it comes to music. I love seeing stuff described in a more poetic way rather than just going, with the whole technicalities. And there's a whole manual on Patchpoint site where you can check out the main features in a more technical terms, and I'll leave that all those necessary links with the manuals and everything in the description. There's also a great manual. I think it was written by Jay from the Deerhorn podcast. I don't know where to find that, as they're probably somewhere on the internet, so happy digging on that. But I do encourage anyone to check out the Deerhorn podcast. I think it's a very great and lovely introduction to the whole world of ciat-lonbarde, is by just listening to people that obviously use them. Now, one other thing that I wanted to mention is, if anybody bought a Plumbutter recently and don't know where to start, there's a guy on YouTube called Thanos F. I'll link it in the description, and he has like this amazing little series on Plumbutter for beginners that you can check out, and you can try to see how he sees Plumbutter in his own way. And I do encourage anyone that's interested to check out his stuff as well. But the most way how I learned how to incorporate Plumbutter in my own little world is just by exploring. It's a ciat-lonbarde instrument. Explore as much as you can. Just have a lot of patch bay cables and try to just see where the input points are and what those input points do and what those output points do. And I think you're gonna be fine just with that. Speaking of patching, I do encourage you to stick around when the second part of the Plumbutter series comes, when we will try to do a basic patch and just hopefully see where that takes us. And maybe you can get a bit of hints and lovely points from that part as well. Please join me next time. Leave a comment if you like. And if you enjoy this type of content, I do encourage you to subscribe. Have a wonderful rest of the evening or morning or afternoon, wherever you are. And I would just like to say, take care. Have a wonderful time.